So, hello, everybody. My name is Kevin Kawchak. I'm CEO, founder of Chemical Q Device and SoCal Quantum. So, as you may know, I'm the host of the Southern California Quantum Computing Discussion. We just had our 16th special speaker, and it's an exciting time. It's a very diverse panel that we have. And so it's just like the way I relate it to is classical only came around once. I don't know any of you remember like the homebrew computer club. So basically, we're in that phase with quantum right now. It's super exciting. It's not nearly as like archaic where we have to like go in our workshops, although some people do. So we have the high-tech version of what I call is the homebrew computer club. If anybody's looking for a good like that first generation with classical getting huge with IBM and Apple, watch the movie Pirates of Silicon Valley. It's hard to find, but it's got the whole story behind Steve and Steve, Jobs and Wozniak. And when I first started writing this provisional patent back in August, that's kind of how I felt. I was like, I kept finding stuff and I was like, wow, there's a lot. I found the IBM roadmap for 1 million qubits by the end of this decade. And I kept finding more and more material. And the more it goes on, I just found, so the NASA space station is shipping a quantum annealing system up to the ISS, International Space Station. And then the largest oil company in the world, I forget the name, but basically they're using quantum annealing technology, which is synonymous with optimization problems. It's a specific type. So the pitch deck I'm going to go over here, I was asked to be a presenter at San Diego's largest tech and startup networking event. And then, so what I did for that is I prepared a pitch deck. My table was adjacent to 2 other UC San Diego booths, which is probably the biggest university in the city. And it just gave me a lot of opportunities to talk to people I knew. A lot of people run up to your booth, and then a lot of people like venture capitalists. And I want to get a feel for this over the course of time, as far as the number of you that are in startups, want to get in startups, that kind of stuff. If you want to post in the chat, I could look over to see, basically, is there a huge demand for this stuff, or do you guys just want to learn more about the quantum technology? So you can see this first slide is basically I've had 2 red ribbon events. So this Chemical Q device is basically the medical device arm of the company. SoCal Quantum is marketing and events, and I would call this talk to be under that. And then I've also had like a provisional patent thing too. So one of the things when I first started all this, it wasn't on the internet. It wasn't having special speakers. It was me for a couple months writing provisional patents, writing reports, writing white papers, the whole thing. So this is an example of one of the quantum ones I did for finance. So this one is, I think, like 13 pages long. I tried to sell them. I never had any luck. I have 3 of these things, and you'll just age over time. But it's a good exercise because obviously you still learn all of this. So when I did the original patent pending, I did all of this additional medical device framework too. And the original patent pending had to do with real-time analysis of pharmaceuticals to critically ill patients in the hospital using like a automatic sensing, like robotic administration, as far as like how much the patient would be distributed the drugs. And after several more months after that, I had to narrow the scope to it's now a quantum-based patient monitor that instead of like doing all this really fancy stuff that we're not quite technically or like in society ready for full robotic administration, this I still have. It's good for probably the next 15, 20 years. And then other things I've done. So I do Chemical Q device newsletters. This is a SoCal Quantum. So these specific ones, I would take a specific article and then, go through and then curate it according. I have a chemistry background. I have a couple degrees in chemistry. I have experience in industry too. So that's where it's helped as far as having this analytical kind of mindset. And as the company grows, and you can see the special speakers here, as the company grows, obviously a lot of these things I won't be able to do all on my own. So these are the collection of the special speakers. So this is complete now. So on Thursday, this UCSD student, she came on, Dipansha, and like the number of opportunities that they give to students these days is just phenomenal. It's it's like she's already had 3 internships. She's sophomore in college. So starting from the upper left, quantum physicist, quantum investor, quantum expert. He's a TEDx speaker. She's a TEDx speaker. He actually designed the Kit Kat song, you know? So, you know, give me a break, give me a break. And somebody else was supposed to sing it, but they liked Chris Bishop's rendition better. You could search for him on LinkedIn. You could search for any of these people on LinkedIn. And so anyway, they kept it. He worked for IBM for 12 years later. And then Kenna's TEDx speaker. So a lot of you may know Brian Lenihan. He's CEO, founder of Quantum Strategy Institute. Salvador's known as the founder of quantum computing in Mexico. Doug Hill does random numbers. Esperanza, she just got a new job at Multiverse. Chuck. So here, okay. Can anybody raise your hand? So who is getting into startups now? Like who's into startups? Who wants to be? Okay, so I can't see as far as video, but there's at least one. Okay, so if you want to do a startup in quantum computing and you don't mind moving to Chicago, I would contact Chuck Vallaparella. So Chuck is the only, so Chuck's, as far as I know, and as far as he knows, he's the only quantum accelerator in the country. So he was on a special speaker, and you know, it's basically it's just not a huge thing yet. I'm trying to get into one called Evo Nexus out here myself. I've applied twice, and then so John Barnes, he's obviously the I don't know if he's the biggest quantum recruiter in the world, but he's one of them. So John's been on my panel as a speaker. Terrell, you may know. So Terrell does a lot of events. And then Shahar's actually on. I saw Shahar. So feel free if you have any comments, Shahar, at any time. It's just we got 57 right now, so it's just hard for me to like scroll up and down. But yeah, Shahar was on one, and then Marlu. So Shahar is the CEO of Polaris QB. And then she's making it happen with quantum and specifically quantum annealing. And then so Marlu is a NIST postdoctoral fellow. David Beach is, he just wrote a book, like I said, Dipansha. And then these are the other leaders of San Diego. So one of the things I want to talk about is a lot of times in startups, if you don't have all those resources, you have to create them. So it's not easy, you know. So for me, I had, you know, a mic. I actually started my first 3 of these episodes in the city. And then somebody said, why don't you do this virtually? So I did it virtually without special speakers. I learned my lesson. And then Ryan was the first special speaker, and he was fresh off of, it's called Q2, QCware's Q2B conference. So it would have been the Q2B 21. And then so he talked about that. And then I got Russ, and then I made it somewhat official around here, you know, as far as having these people on. But as a startup, because that's what this talk is about, is a lot of times you won't have every single resource at your disposal. You have to create them. And the way you do that is through experience, hard work, resources. You know, you do have to take advice, and especially social skills. If you don't have social skills, just go hang out at the places that do, and you will acquire them. Force yourself. I go to the beach all the time, and I do work from the beach all the time too. So this was a LinkedIn posting that I did here, and it basically like helped break me into the networking site. So this is one of the big ones, and the other one was like a top 15 of quantum computing experts. And then I've just done a bunch of this as far as like the IP. So this is looking at caffeine and the number of qubits. So it says 160 qubits are needed for full simulation of caffeine. So this is like a super duper kind of thing. So I've just done a bunch of those. Obviously the last several months, more of like the marketing and events. But I actually a fair amount of grant writing too. I've applied for NSF and M2D2, and then I had to submit for more information too. So, and then, so this is just another example. Like I put this all together thinking that people would love it. I do, because it kind of shows like what chemical Q, SoCal Quantum, virtual networks, and then, especially like having an org chart. So it helped me organize in my mind at the bare minimum. And then, are there any questions right now? So I said we got about 58. Some people I know. Feel free to unmute your mic, or because all of this is meant to be interactive as far as like how is it possible to be a startup in anywhere? And you have to have resources, you have to have people around you have to talk to people both in person and virtually. It takes a lot of effort, and you'll have these cities that are more prone to startups like the Bay Area. San Diego, not quite as much, but Gaurav, did you have a question?
Yeah. So it's a very basic question. I just want to ask, as of now, have you shown, or has any company in quantum chemistry shown any practical advantage or in using quantum mechanics as a resource?
Yeah. So the whole thing with quantum right now, the applications, the only type of technology as first that I'm aware of, it's called hybrid quantum annealing. So that company is called D-Wave. I think Fujitsu just does a little bit of it, but it only allows you to do optimization problems. So if you imagine you have like at the top of a funnel and you have a bunch of data and you're trying to narrow it down to a specific end solution, that's what it does. So it's only for optimization problems. However, Lockheed Martin, you have Denso, Mitsubishi Estates, NASA, Google. I had mentioned the NASA. So that NASA thing they're sending up to the space, that's quantum annealing. The biggest petroleum oil company in the world, Saudi based, they're using quantum annealing for optimization problems. And the reason is because the inherent technology is a lot less faulty, right? Like it has a lot less error than a lot of other like superconducting, and I think even trapped ion. So D-Wave, that same company, they first started the company in 1999, over 20 years ago. They commercialized the technology in 2011, meaning that, they sold their services to whoever. And as far as I know, it keeps getting better. Now, the qubit counts on quantum annealing might be like 5,000, where on superconducting, it's 127, but that's not a relevant number. So, when they use all of this stuff, it's, just specifically, there's a Port of Los Angeles problem that they did with hybrid quantum annealing. And some people, like the purists, it's not the fastest technology, and it's not nearly the most versatile, but that same company, they're starting to incorporate gate-based into it. So you're going to have not only hybrids, like you have a CPU, GPU, QPU, you'll also have hybrids of quantum technologies where it'll be like annealing, gate-based, and specific to what the problem needs.
Right. Sorry, I have one follow-up question, because you have been talking about how they have used quantum algorithms for optimization. So how much advantage have they gotten in terms of like if we compare it to the classical optimization techniques? Because I mean, I myself do some optimization, but then I always sell my papers or sell my work on the basis of that I'm able to do something using a semi-definite program, which is a convex optimization, and thus can be efficiently solved classically. So using the quantum optimization techniques, how much advantage do we really get? Like,
right. It's very fitted for transportation and finance problems. So in transportation, you have, in Microsoft's case, they claimed it was 60 or 70% better traffic optimization of a scenario in Seattle, Washington, and rush hour traffic that they got, basically, the vehicles routed into different places better. So it just depends on the application. I mean, trying to find those, like the hard numbers in finance, I mean, I would definitely check out D-Wave's website. because they update it, right? And it's just like, it's one of these things they tried. If you're trying to get into quantum and trying to get like data out of your application, I would start there and make sure you find somebody that's technical as opposed to sales. Cause I talked to people from sales and I wasn't ready, but I was just like inquiring. But they're key to the whole thing, because like they've been over for 20 years and they could likely tell you what's right from wrong, as opposed to somebody that just started a year or two, So, but there are, this IonQ stuff, they just, like we were talking about in the beginning, they just made times 100, top 100 2022 of the most influential companies this year. And then they come out with a fair amount of news as far as like how many algorithmic qubits you have, and the circuit depth and circuit width compared to the other. If you look at Tom's hardware, if a lot of you are familiar with that. So yeah, that's basically, I mean, you can do algorithm design and development on quantum, but a lot of the hardware is really noisy or faulty. You could do simulation, but it's really slow, but there's no noise. So we did like a IBM 21 qubit quantum simulator, and it had no quantum advantage because it was too slow. There was no noise, so it's one of these things. As the hardware really turns the corner, it's such an issue. Are there any other questions right now? I know other people have hopped on.
Great. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, you can keep asking them too, but we got a lot of people too. So
I was wondering.
Yeah, go ahead, Jenny.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kevin. I assume your provisional patent, when you filed, you should receive a number, right? Your filing number.
Yes.
And then that provisional patent is for 1 year, so that means until September this year.
Correct.
Right. So then by September this year, you'll need to complete your application.
Yeah, it's the utility filing. And then in utilities, it's typically a very specific thing off of the provisional. So I'm not sure is the amount of material able to retain, but it's typically, I think each utility is like for a very specific thing. So there's like very detailed charts of information. That's basically the next thing I have to do, because I filed for a couple grant applications, and it just has to be so exhaustively so nobody else can do it, really. So any other questions?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Kevin, I just sent you a private message. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So everybody, Yinning comes on to mind. He's been on the past couple. So he's always chimes in. He's got 3 questions at a time for the other special speakers, and now I'm getting the bulk of them. Okay, so this current one that you see, I presented this at March Mingle too. This is basically using a patient monitor simulator software based. Okay, so they sell these things like Fluke meters, like your hardware software. This is all on your phone. And as an instructor, I can change the curves of the EEGs or whatever's. And the whole thing is basically this bottom part. This is a car accident victim. So, the whole crux of the project is basically patient monitoring data analytics, utilizing quantum computing technologies to obtain better patient diagnoses. And then by looking at a single one of these, putting it into a spreadsheet with more, with quantum, it's not exactly, but in general, when you add a qubit, you can add a column, right? So the more columns you have, the more things you can look at all at the same time. And it would still take these medical data, patient data experts to determine what the disease is as it's going in. But this is basically where the project is going, is creating these huge tables of Excels that you can't do classically, but you can do quantumly, and then obtaining better diagnosis. So when instead of a doctor looking up on this and he says, oh, okay, it's this. Well, he's not accounting for all of these little fluctuations. So we're trying to make it more into a science than an art is the whole thing. And this is a specific, so this is the header of and then this is a specific prototype that, basically looking at, scientific workstation. So a lot of these things, if you've heard of Amazon AWS bracket, it's called BRAKET. It allows you to take a specific task, put it up in the cloud, and then send most of it classically cheaper, and then do the things that would take an extremely long amount of time or would benefit from quantum mechanics, like I brought up, to do on the quantum hardware on that specific one. And then this is obviously the marketing in the ARM. So does anybody have any questions?
Yes, I saw a question.
Yeah.
The participant asked, what exactly would a quantum startup be doing? Creating the quantum computer or outsourcing to companies? How would this practically work considering multi-billion-dollar companies like IBM, Microsoft, Google are still trying to develop this infrastructure?
Right. Well, there's going to be a ton of application companies. That's mine. I don't create hardware. So unless you can create hardware, because there's like photonics, there's ion trap, there's superconducting, there's annealing, there's simulation, all that kind of stuff. So as far as like I had mentioned before, is basically you need to pick a problem that would work with today's technology. And right now that's optimization problems. So actually on this specific deck, and I can include the link to here. Okay. Is, you have to play by the rules of what's available. So it should be available through there. It's this pitch deck. So I presented it at the SoCal Quantum Red Ribbon in February. And I would do that instead of like saying, oh, I like photonics just because it's room temperature, or I like superconducting because it's the most powerful, or I like ion trap because it's like, has the best circuit depth and width. Those types of things is just find out what types of problems they can solve. And I would just hop right on the D-Wave. To be honest, because if you could talk to they've been around for over 20 years. And like I said, even though they mostly do, it's called hybrid annealing, which is a CPU with QPUs, is that they have a leg up. And then they actually originally started off as superconducting and then switched back, or gate-based. They switched back to annealing because it's the only thing that was practical for 20 years or whatever. And then now they're coming back to making these hybrids of, you have annealing plus gate-based. And, so you have all of these combinations of quantum, and there's not going to be just one winner, the experts predict. You're going to have, a combination of, you could have photonic, more than likely like annealing and superconducting or gate-based in the same one. So, and we do have other questions here. Next question. Today's problems are foreseen problems. Yeah, if you could clarify with that one, and then we have another hand here.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think you had said that the focus should be on solving today's problems. So I was saying, perhaps from a business perspective, does it make sense to kind of see the current landscape and kind of predict what the potential foreseen problems could be and actually start developing with that in mind instead?
Yeah, if I understand your question right, I think like there's a lot of like these as far as quantum simulation, like for instance, like pharmaceuticals, they want to simulate drugs and everything inside a quantum computer. And so they don't have to go to the lab, right? Well, I showed you the one about caffeine, 162 qubits. Well, that's just for caffeine. So if you have everything else in your body in this simulated computer, then you're talking many years out. For seeing, because there's all kinds of stuff with AI, ML. Basically, I think what we have to focus on right now is the things that we can do with optimizing. Because like I said, it's the only one that has like percents and figures and numbers. If you look at D-Wave's website, it's got a whole bunch of those. So yeah, I think there's a lot of that projection, but like the biggest, what I said before is like, you have financial, you have transportation optimization problems. So you've heard of like Marlowe, it's a specific type of Monte Carlo simulation.
Yeah.
And it's specific types of things that basically the low hanging fruit trying to get that right now.
Definitely. But would you say that for startups, potentially they are capable of taking more risks and being a bit more kind of future focused in comparison to kind of large companies or businesses who are otherwise a bit more conservative and are having to kind of focus on current problems?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like for me, it's just like I've had to, it's a lot of times these bigger companies around here, they have to pull from these startups that, can take a lot more risk as far as like do a little bit here, do a little bit there, whereas they have to like devote the whole thing to it once it does work. But and again, like if your problem isn't solvable in the next couple of years, it probably won't get funded, based on the limitations of hardware. So, you kind of have to look at now, because it's same thing. What I'm doing is like, I have to find specific projects that, for specific problems. Okay, questions? I think Rengel, Carlos, go ahead. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Hey.
so I actually have a question.
Okay.
It's more regarding the software. So I'm more familiar with quantum regarding like qubits and like, the actual hardware. But what would be like kind of commercial softwares that we could use as in today? Not necessarily commercial as in like, selling software, but things like Python or other.
Yeah, sure. So IBM Qiskit is pretty much the de facto. So if you do a Google search for quantum computing, IBM shows up because, they've been first to the game. They're trying to make the hardest technology work. So they also have, so the good thing for a lot of this stuff, trying to make hard, like this difficult technology to work, is basically there's been good developments in algorithms, software, programming systems, the whole thing. So that's pretty much the start. There's things called MIT Twist. And I think most of these use Python as like the central thing. Okay, next question.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm really a big beginner in this quantum thingy, but yes, I just know that, for example, a professor in a project, because I'm a physicist, was making a company out of his PhD dissertation. So my question is that how do you, for example, or how do I start small? I would assume that I would need a supercomputer, right? So how can do I need to go for funding immediately, or can I start small, for example?
Yeah, start small. So there's a number of quantum hardware options. I mentioned IBM Qiskit. It was free for us to go on to the smaller number of qubits. So you have to learn how to do, and actually a colleague I was working with, he did all this stuff and he learned everything. He didn't have any kind of computer science degree or anything. He wrote a book on it. And then, so it's called staff notation. And it's possible to use that right now because the number of qubits is small, right? Like if you have musical notes and you have 100 qubits, well, that's 100 lines, like strings, So you're going to want to do a lot of YouTube research, find out like the basics, take notes, and then just keep talking to people. Talk to people who add people on LinkedIn. Say you look up to them. Can you help me out? In this initial quantum programming, and eventually you should get to the point where you should host events. Because people look up to you if you host events. But I would say just to get started, try to find like all of the free options. I know the AWS bracket, it's hybrid, right? But you have a specific job and you send certain classical, certain quantum. And I think that costs money. So if money's not an issue, there are ways of spending $10,000 without knowing it. I've heard of that. So, make sure you know what you're doing. Because I don't know if you could put caps or any of that kind of stuff on whatever's. But basically, yeah, try to find the things at this stage for you. I kind of feel like it's more like learning, you know, so after you learn some, you know, try and then go back to learn, try, you know, it's like everything with startups. People think like when I did my provisional patent, I thought I had it made, but it was just really only the beginning. You know, I thought I could take it to a company and they pay me millions of dollars. Didn't work. It's about hard work. You know, companies, if you want to get bought out or whatever, it's about portfolios. It's not like a single project. Typically, if you're extremely well connected, maybe, but you know, by and large, it's usually like you're doing so much work that nobody else can really replicate and they don't have any other idea or to take you on. So I hope that helped. Carlos? Okay, any other questions right now? So
yeah,
go ahead.
Hey, I have a question, Kino. If you use Qiskit in quantum computing, the error rate is, I think, about 20%. What do you use for error correction?
Oh, there's a lot of developing things. Actually, IBM's summer conference is called the Error Correction Summer Conference. I think for less experienced coders. My presenter Thursday night isn't going to that. There's another big development by Q Control. It's the letter Q dash and then TRL. And basically what they said is they found 9,000 times better error correction off these noisy kind of IBM Qiskit, you know, hardware. So it's one of those things, it's kind of like workarounds probably because like you're trying to account for that error, but ultimately we want to get rid of it. So yes, there's other companies too have come across and they basically offer certain things that you have an end like solve problem and then you just treat it with whatever and it gets better. You know, like algorithms. Yeah.
I know that Honeywell, for example, has a QEC which does it in real time. It only uses one logical qubit to do the error correction.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. Like I said, like a lot of it's trying to take care of the error at the hardware as opposed to like trying all these workarounds to account for that it already exists. So I touched on this before with the annealing. It's a lot less powerful, but it's also a lot less error. And that's why people have applications, you know? So for the IBM, I can't think of anything else besides that, like the workarounds. I know that IBM's kind of partnered with other companies, you know, I think that's the end goal. If they're naming their summer conference, error correction conference, you know what I mean?
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, I saw a question. Francis asked, I was wondering what opportunities are available given the large hardware players. Is it basic OS and basic software or application space?
That I don't know. I don't pay attention to that as much. If you sign up for Google Alerts, just search for quantum computing jobs, either naked or in quotes, and then you should start to get some good stuff. I'm trying to think if anybody pops out. I mean, I'll have some stuff for sure, but we're still waiting for the funding. So yeah, it's one of those things you should be able to find it. And then I've heard that these days that sometimes you could just go on and not even have a background because they need people so much. I've heard that. So, you know, as far as all these things go is like, you know, you have to just be proactive. You'll find what you need, I think. Okay, Nardo.
Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Nardo.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. So you're doing something in the medical device space. So how does the FDA regulation impact your quantum medical device product go to market? Because quantum in itself is very nascent, and then you have a medical device, so it just compounds, you know, your potential go to market here. So I want to see. So
the initial scope would be algorithms to do those, you know, designing those, and then next like proof of concept, prototype, medical device. So there's a number of people in government that I've been in touch with. I just saw it was a DARPA talk, on quantum. And I feel like a lot of this is going to carry over. I mean, the current thing is obviously, I think, like 5 phases of FDA approval for the currents. So yeah, I don't know exactly.
Okay, yeah, I just want to see if there's going to be a big difference, because what you're doing is classified as a medical device, regardless if it's an algorithm or not, right? So
Yeah, I'm sure there will be some, but keep in mind, quantum is a government initiative. So in the early 80s, NSF was the first to fund it. And then ever since then, now we have DARPA, they're sending it up to the space station. So they're actually taking a quantum annealer, sending it up there. And then the headlines, a lot of these headlines they use is like breakthrough, and especially with DARPA is that they want to, whoever the other parties they're working with, they really want to get this to work, So yes, there'll be likely like a trickle down as far as, by the time it gets to, these types of approvals. But yeah, I think with any emerging technology, it's going to be, approvals.
okay, and one last question, Kevin, does your device will it eventually contain a quantum sensor?
That's up in the air. So I showed a prototype earlier, and that showed existing hospital outputs. So that would be like an EEG, EKG, SpO2, and then getting that classical data and then processing it quantumly, just in bigger chunks. So then the next prototype, I'm actually talking with a colleague. He does squids, these types of quantum sensors. And so that could be an option too, but that's what we were thinking as far as the number of approvals needed, if it's for each specific one, or if it's possible just to have a specific quantum sensor that does everything. That's my thought, is basically a little bit down the road, is, first having a quantum-based patient monitor.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Yeah. Okay, so we have some other questions here, Colin.
Somebody asked, please explain annealing things.
Yeah, so annealing is synonymous with optimizing. So anytime you see optimizing in the title or in the paragraphs, that's synonymous with that type of technology. So it's basically like if you have a funnel of like problems up here, you're using the quantum annealing to go down and then create a local minimum or lower energy that creates a better solution than what you had before. The company that comes to mind is GE was using this basically with D-Wave's quantum annealing, and they just said they didn't provide any results. You could find it. They said we have 100,000 parts here and 50,000 here, and we optimized it. Okay, so that's typically how they use it. Is it's a specific type of problem. It's not like the most technical of problems, but it's trying to think what else. Johnson Janssen, they use it. So Shahar uses it too. She's on the call, and feel free to hop on, Shahar, if you want. But it's basically the limited type of thing that we're waiting for, this less noise and less error, higher fidelity with the circuit base. Okay, any other questions?
I saw a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I saw a question on YouTube. Can you give me a reason why you need QC for your problem? For example, it may take 100 years for a classical computing system to finish. Give us some numbers.
Yeah, sure. Like you just said, it's basically anything that would take too long. So the math involved with quantum computing is called linear algebra, complex numbers, and quantum mechanics. So quantum mechanics is a different type of math. So that's the other part of it, is that if the problem could use quantum mechanics better, or it just needs it to cut down on time. And keep in mind, a lot of these things can be done better with classical, a CPU. I'd mentioned the CPU, GPU, and QPU example in like a future laptop, where the QPU is the quantum processing unit. And some things are better quantum. So you're not going to find in a lot of applications, unless you're doing like pure algorithm development, you know, on a just pure quantum hardware, you're going to find lots of hybrids. And I think that was the step. So AWS Bracket commercialized, or basically they announced, so Google quantum supremacy, like, you know, quantum computers faster than a classical computer. That was October 2019. And then December 19 was AWS's Bracket. And it wasn't released to the public. It was released the next year, but late last November, they released hybrid jobs. And I keep talking about this, where you send a certain top job up there, and you send specific things classically that you want to, it's cheaper, and the things that you can't, that would take advantage of things going faster or utilizing quantum mechanics, you send it to quantum hardware. So like I said, like, you know, it's just, you're going to have hybrids of quantum. You're going to have hybrids between quantum and classical. Any other questions?
Do you have circumstances where the quantum computer actually isn't faster for certain circumstances and certain data sets? So I think you've obviously just touched on that, but I mean, for perhaps not so much for medical, because that's quite complex. You've got larger data sets, but I can imagine that for some examples, and I suppose it's quite useful if you're planning to create a startup, that actually, you know, having a classical computer is probably better in terms of overfitting, and if it's not complex enough, it's probably kind of more efficient to use classical rather than quantum.
Yeah, there's a whole range of quantum advantage. And when we're talking about quantum annealing problems, you're like over here. And when you talk about hybrid quantum annealing problems, when you're taking a classical element plus a quantum element, and again, it depends on the problem, you know, you get a better quantum advantage. But we're nowhere even close to, like, if we had 1 million, let's say, high fidelity, superconducting qubits, like at IBM, that they say by the end of the year, and I shared the one that might be coming in 2 years, is that they have a Samsung Galaxy phone, and it has a quantum random number generator in it, and it was released, I think, middle of last year, South Korea. However, without doing much research into it and knowing what the other limitations of quantum hardware are, it's not anticipated that it's like this awesome thing. But there's other quantum random number generators that have more and more, you know, quantum advantage. And the same thing goes with anything. It's very quite possible to run experiments with less advantage than classically. I had a colleague, and things that are developing very quickly, but he would always say there's many things you could just run just fine classically cheaper, but the client just wanted to run them quantum just because they wanted to say quantum. They didn't have quantum advantage. You see what I mean? So it's all about the problem, the type of hardware. It's a very specific thing. It's not like a laptop where I'm just saying, I click on, you know, Firefox here and then it launches. You know, it's not there yet. Now, I would like to tell a lot of you, NSF is predicting next year we will have a practical quantum computer. Have you guys heard that? And then IBM CEO said a similar thing. By the end of next year, he says, it's not as strong. He said there could be a practical quantum computer by the end of next year. So to me, that might be like a shippable business desktop. It could be a bunch of things. And actually these two slides are hand in hand here. So show of hands, does anybody know Mike Lazaridis? Okay, so Mike Lazaridis, if you liked the BlackBerry, he was a co-founder. So he's big into Canadian quantum investments up in the University of Waterloo. And then so they have a building up there, and then he built one adjacent to it, and by plan and everything. And then so he's one of the early investors since 2013. And then so what had happened is last year, $683 million private investment. And then this year, 2 years ago, and then this past year, 3.2, which is more than the previous years combined here. So these values are taken from, this is global VC deals up until 2020. And then 2021 is called total private funding with Q Insider. So you see this, you know, exponential behavior here. And, basically it means, I mean, it probably means different things to different people, but it's just like these hardware manufacturers, mostly the manufacturers, I think, are doing a good job convincing investors that, quantum is real. There's no turning back. Even since August, I was like becoming more and more sure of myself. There was in October, there was Rigetti and IonQ. And those are the big ones because there's like $2 billion for IonQ. And I think Rigetti was 1 point something. And they just, basically IPO'd on NASDAQ. So, it's a good indicator, if you look at these two figures here. And then this so these are compound annual growth rates. So a compound annual growth rates for a good medical device is 6%, for these upcoming years. And here you could see a good medium is 30%. So when you start to couple a lot of these technologies, I think you're going to see a lot of exponential growth, in these pre-existing fields. So I mentioned NSF. So the other two big figures, Accenture says by 2030, there should be $332 billion GDP in New York State. So I think that's an annual. And then this one, by 2040, Boston Consulting Group, $850 billion total annual value tied to quantum. So these are more recommendations. So I want to talk a little bit about this. So I know basically people have perceptions about, you have a question, Deb?
Yes. What is the NSF's quantum computer called, and what technology it is? Is it superconducting or?
So it's this PDF that they update from time to time. And then it just says on it, it's 2023 first practical computer due to their projects that they funded. So, they give grants, and that's all that's really on that slide. And I can find it for you, or just reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll give you the PDF. I have it on my computer, it'll just take a while. But yeah, I mean, if they're the first to fund in the early 80s, I mean, it's more like the theoretical quantum kind of stuff. But keep in mind, a lot of people think like, oh, it's an industry. No, industry was last. Government was first. So of course you had these physicists, I think in the 1920s, but then the government started funding it. And then, it goes to academia for research, and then it goes from academia to industry. So, these two past years are really the time it looks like from those charts with the exponential growth that it's really taken off. And, it's one of those things. So I want to talk a little bit about business here. So can you guys see the schedule? And then, so basically a lot of people think you could be friends the whole way through. It's not going to happen. People have expectations and they get big. So there has to be a way of, because as a founder CEO, you have to have exponential growth by the end of every month. Okay. And in order to have that, people have to work pretty much as hard as you do. So there's a bunch of these things. And if you're looking to get into startups, you have to be aware of the resources that you have. This is called Founders Institute. And this is like a founder's advisor. So basically this says if you work, say like 20 hours a month, then you get 1% of the company. Okay. So it goes up and down. And if you don't do these types of things, just things get very relaxed, or not relaxed, but like people just work how they want, you know what I mean? So if you really want to move the needle forward, it's really hard to, if there's not some type of defined thing. And like I said, if your parents or whoever has money, that's great, because a lot of these things can be taken care of pretty easily. But a lot of times there's waiting, you have to wait for certain stage gates if you get a grant, these types of things. And I want to show you, let's see. So this was a specific thing we did. So basically this shows, so we had a member ask, is it possible to run but not get quantum advantage? Yes. So part of it's getting better hardware. Part of it's designing better experiments, so in specific, if there's a specific type of, thing we're looking at, symptoms and disease versus cancer, the whole goal is to get better quantum advantage. And the way things are moving as far as like error correction, and this was like a 21 qubit quantum simulator, the things that are, how things are moving is they're moving very fast, so if you do an experiment 2 or 3 months ago, you could have a lot better, results. So I don't know if Shahar's back on, but Shahar, thanks for coming. Shahar was one of my special speakers here. And then I see Marlu posted NSF here too. Yep, I think that's the one, just looking at the link. I'm not going to open it. And let's see. So anybody else, any other questions right now?
I saw a question. What do you use for error correction in Qiskit?
Well, like I said, I think that most recent announcement, I don't know if it's been released yet, is this Q control. So the letter Q dash TRL, they say 9,000 times better error correction in faulty, it's very powerful, but it's also very faulty. And then like I said, I only came across one other company that did it. I can't remember, Keysight, maybe? I forget the name of the company, but it's not. That's why they have this conference this summer, is because it's, error tends to be random, right? Like it's hard. So if you find an algorithm of predicting the pattern of the noise, then you're a little bit better off. And any other questions right now?
I noticed a question. Being an investor in early stage technology companies, what's the best way to connect with other investors or founders having significant opportunities?
Well, like I said, there's only, Nardo's on right now, so you can contact Nardo. There's, as far as like the incubators, I think there's just one in Chicago. It's called Duality Accelerator, and it's run by Chuck Valaparella. But you have to move to Chicago, but he gives you 50K, if you move there, if they accept you. So that's the opposite. I just came from Michigan, so I'm good here. I just want warmer at this point. So yeah, as far as finding other investors, look at the hardware manufacturers. So you got IonQ, you got Rigetti, you got D-Wave. They've all been invested. So they're all over $1 billion worth of, I don't know how you classify that, basically valuation or whatever, or SPAC deals, SPACs. And then, so they're all over $1 billion. So D-Wave, Rigetti, IonQ. And then, you have Honeywell. Anyway, find out who invested in them. That's the easiest. So this is an example. Okay, so we got more questions. Can you tell us? Oh, yeah. Yeah, so this is what I practice for. So hopefully there's some younger people in the crowd, or less experienced, I should say. So I started off as a chemist in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And I have a couple degrees in chemistry at Eastern Michigan University. And then I was at a company called Avamine. They were bought out by a company called Element Materials Technology. And then during that time, I was a chemist, and I thought I was working really hard. I did marketing and events. I was a chemist. I did everything. But let me tell you something. If you guys want to get into a regular job, they only want to hire you for that specific purpose. If you want to do whatever you want, if you feel like it's productive towards what you're doing, you have to do your own startup, because, it's just one of those things. It's like when you become because that's what I'm doing now, is basically figuring out who's has whatever talent, and I have an org chart and specific tasks and deliverables and that kind of stuff too. And I'm going through the same thing, and I only want people for certain things. If I run into them at the beach, that's fine, but that's the main thing, is that's the lesson that I learned is basically, it was tricky because I saw other people moving in other positions, and then I was trying so hard with like painting skateboards, company logos, the whole kind of things. And it just got to a pushing point. It's just like, okay, I didn't get a raise and that kind of stuff. And I had family out here. I actually vacationed out here in December 2020. And then so I came out here in 2020. And I was like, yeah, this is going to happen. So I thought I was able, here's another story for everybody trying to get into a big city. I started to apply January of 2021 to move out here, and it didn't work after 4 months because I wasn't local and they didn't have chemist positions. You know, I was trying to get like DNA bio kind of stuff. So that didn't work. And then, so I moved out here anyway without a job, got a contract job at BASF. It only lasted a month. And I just started going to all the startup stuff. I started the provisional patent. I didn't plan at that time. It was just to get the patent to take to a company. And then basically there was a bunch of delays. And then I asked a good colleague friend of mine, I was like, I just want to make this patent open source. He says, Kevin, don't do it. Don't make it open source. So I didn't. And then I kept developing it. So like I said, those first 3 months, it was just pure IP, just further working on the medical device that I say is, you know, good for the next 20 to 30 years. And then over the course of time, you know, talked to other people. I had a wealth manager friend. He was telling me he left his company because they were forcing him to sell stuff that didn't have use. So that's where I came up with the idea for the patent. But yeah, it's just one of these things, like if you're in a big city and you have so many resources. I went to 3 tech coffees last week. They're each like 2 or 3 hours long. And these people will encourage you and motivate you without them even knowing it. But I would say a lot of things with startups, I think a fair number of you are wanting to get into them, is they're complete opposite to like a small business, like a C Corp, that kind of stuff. If you go to a bank, they'll want like 2 years of experience. They want like, you know, revenue, you know, 50, 100K per month, stuff like that. So yeah, it's hard because it's not like a regular company. And we were just talking about this yesterday at the tech company, or the tech coffee is basically in San Diego. It's really not as big as the Bay Area. So Bay Area, there's history, there's, you know, intrigue. You have Stanford, and a block away, you have Google, you know, and we have Pfizer down here. We have big companies, but it's not like a huge, that city's called La Jolla. I'm in San Diego, and I try to get up there every month, but I hope that answered your question. And then, so we have some other questions here too, right? He says, what made you think your startup was going to succeed? There's a lot of times that I just wasn't sure. Like there's been 13 people that I've talked to like seriously about the company that, you know, either have full-time jobs or, you know, did their own startups. And I wasn't getting them the number of hours I needed out of them. So I just worked harder. So I worked, you know, between like 60, 80 hours a week, and even still. So when you hit these big milepoints, so the March Mingle thing, so I was presenting next to basically 2 other UCSD booths. I was like, yeah, this is pretty sweet. You know, chemical Q device startup, patient monitoring data analytics with quantum computing technology. And I had a lot of people at my booth. So, you know, you get these little things, but then you know, like you'll have a delay with so I basically, you know, submitted twice to this for federal grant, and everything seems online, but you never know like when you're going to get back. So I would say, I don't know, every time like I have a good discussion, you know, post the videos and I'm like, you know, scroll up and down after I do it, that's a good indicator. But yeah, it's more of, you know, a startup is more of like a construction worker than it is like a, you know, like a high paid academic position. You know, there's a lot of grunt work. There's a lot of stuff that is not glamorous at all. There's a lot of invitations that are just very time consuming. So yeah, I would say those types of things. He said, so John, okay, so John Gusmowski, he comes on a bunch of mine. for the Southern California quantum computing discussion. He says, I always say we were looking for the noise, and this is detect is the first step. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, and then Prachi, so she's come on other one of mine. She says, yeah, personal growth and expansion. Companies only want you for narrow specific output. So everybody read that comment by Prachi. Companies only want you for narrow specific outputs. Okay. And chances are, if you're a successful CEO, you'll delegate so much that you will have a defined task. But this is so true. That's what I would say too, is like, I don't know, like, do a lot of the attendees, like, have you gone to startup stuff, or because we have Startup San Diego, we have March Mingle, or you just catch it online?
This is my first meeting, so like there's none of this stuff at home, so this is really eye-opening. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So like I said, actually, I'm going to post a couple things. So I think you had asked how I got into all this, and I started actually listening to a lot of these. It's kind of like CEO mindset affirmations for entrepreneurs, because your family, if they're not 100% supportive of you, they're going to probably get you down. So there's 2 links I just posted there, and you can keep those. One of them was a gift from a friend of mine, and then the other one I found on my own. But I listened to one of those over 2 years ago, and I still listen to it, because one of the things that the gentleman comes on and he says is he's like, you know, your friends, your family, you know, everybody's going to tell you you're not worth anything, you know, and it's true. Like, you have to find people that are doing startups, did startups, are going to do startups. Find good mentors. That's a word that hasn't gotten brought up. I've had a number of good mentors, and they shift, you know, they'll shift over time. But yeah, like, you know, keep your mentors, and it's basically like, they'll say occasionally stuff that's not helpful to the company, but not usually, you know. Like, you're the one that got brought up earlier. I think Prachi said that is like pushing the needle forward. And then another 2 that really helped. So this was when I was a chemist. This was out in Ann Arbor. And that was actually, let's see here. So how to give compliments, soft skills, choosing optimism. These types of things are really important too. You don't think they matter, but they do. You'll learn them. If you're a successful entrepreneur, you'll learn them. People will tell you. So I want to get back to Shahar's thing here too. So hers is Polaris. This is basically a format that I do every week. So once you get so proficient at doing something, it becomes less and less hard, you know. It's just more, because this is a school she went to. This is Duke University. These are upcoming events. So May 13th, I'm talking to a university associated investor, and they want to help me launch at UCSD or UC San Diego. And then the big one, the global one, maybe similar to this, would be in August in 22. And then this is the news. So this was a couple weeks old. So there's all types of, like, you know, photonics. You know, you get D-Wave. This is like a collaboration, saying this bank. And I think the most recent 2 one was HSBC and IBM. So we go through headlines, the whole thing. If any of you get super inclined for quantum, just direct message me, and we'll see if we can work you in. And then DARPA. So DARPA asked, this was a big one. So Raytheon, BBN, and USC researchers to test the limits of quantum computing for military applications. So the same thing is, DARPA wants a utility scale, which is big, fault tolerant quantum computer. So there was a DARPA podcast recently, and it was excellent. He was all this inside information, how DARPA works, and, like, you know, how many other people are employed in a similar position. So we got JP Morgan, we got NIST, Xanadu, And here's the big one. Actually, it's this one. So these are the types of articles that, like, I don't think Q Control is a huge company, but as you can see here, 9,000 times improvement in quantum algorithm success. And a lot of these have to do with error suppression. So especially for those of you that want to succeed as a quantum computing application startup, I would really get the Google alerts. If you're good, you could just check it every 2 or 3 days, and then check it then. But if you just check it once a week and you have 7 of them, check them all at the same time. And so that's an example of what we do every Thursday. And then who has questions? So I think Mark said, like, people in this group are with a growth mindset and an entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah, I would totally agree. Like, a lot of, I guess, because it's taking me a while to have an entrepreneur, you know, like if you watch one of those videos that I put in the links, is it's a learned thing. A lot of times, like, people are used to having what their families tell them, like, you're not worth anything, that kind of stuff. Or more or less, like, you have a maximum and that kind of stuff. But if you keep talking to the right people, you can start to inch into the whole, you know, startup scene, right? And I think this got brought up before, and somebody says, oh, Kino says, look at the Clubhouse app. So that's a good one too. I've been on there. There's a lot of entrepreneurs. So just make sure, pick a topic that, like, is yours, because there is some other stuff on there. So Clubhouse. But I think for a successful startup, don't think after you do one thing, you have it made. It's like a portfolio. So you want to be building up something. It's like a building process. Because I was talking to some UC San Diego students, and they said, like, oh, what if somebody takes my idea? I'm sure that's a question that somebody has here. And if somebody, number one, when you come out and you first have your first idea, chances are a lot of people else did. So what I told her, and that's what I did with mine, is not only do I have this provisional patent, is I kept building it, right? So you have arms of your patent, okay? And then say, for instance, you're good at chemistry and physics, and then you start to build that into, you know, your utility patent. But the whole thing with this is, like, it's a long journey. Like, I started in August. I thought I was going to get funded in September or October, you know? And I mean, for some reasons, it's good that I didn't. I mean, or I thought a company was going to buy out the idea. But you have to, like, for these Johnson Johnson, these huge companies, they have to have some intrigue, right? Like, what's your intrigue? Like, you know, like, if you're trying to apply for a job with them, but you have this patent pending that has nothing to do with that, that's not the intrigue. They still want you, even though you do have that stuff, you know? So I guess the moral of the story is, like, don't expect to get funded right away. It's really hard. I would say the companies that do have a lot of this, you know, funding up front, is like, they might not have material and they can get into trouble, you know? And by in trouble, it could be like, you know, like this, you know, you don't have any material, and they say, well, you had an idea that it's going to be here, and then you're banking on it, and that in 6 months it is. That could be trouble. So there's a question. Did you ever apply for a JJ? Yeah, I did. And then they said to keep in touch. So I have. So I haven't had as much luck with that one. Like I said, I just reapplied to Evo Nexus. That's in San Diego, everybody. And then more recently, I've been focusing on the grants. For sure. It's like free money. You can't do whatever you want with grant money. Like, it has a specific purpose, you know, but like with everything, like, once you do get funding, there's rules. So then Andrew, so today would be able to download. Oh, okay. So I think Helen, he just wants to download. And then John G's question, how do you set up a provisional patent? There's two ways. I think you can do it on your own for like 90 bucks. And what most people do for a provisional patent is you don't have claims. You don't need them. And then you just have like a handwritten diagrams. And I think you just scan them in. It's just to get like your thought on paper. Well, I went the whole way because she says it's good. So I have claims. So we did 20 claims. So like, for instance, in a provisional patent, your first claim might be, this specific invention that has these specific parts is number 1. And then number 2 through I think 11 support number 1. And then on number 12, it says in more detail, it says, oh yeah, by the way, it does this, specifically. And then number 13 through 20. And I think you get more claims if you file for a utility. But anyway, I hired a patent lawyer. She cut me a deal. They can cost thousands of dollars, because there's some things like, say, if you did a provisional patent, but you didn't have claims, but somebody else did and they had claims, and now you're trying to do a utility patent and then they have claims, So anyway, we kind of did it right as far as the number or as far as the level of detail. And it's one of those things. It's just like, it's not required to do a great job, but it helps, especially when you go to develop again, because you had original claims, because there could be some arguing point as to what your first provisional patent was. But yeah, it's anywhere from like 90 to several $1,000s. So, okay, how did you set up? So then Ron, if you want to come on, Ron, I saw a couple of yours. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, very good session here, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you.
So having invested a lot of money in many young startups, we're quite versed in this ecosystem. And there is a couple of challenges. One is a need to learn fast by the founders to get the job done, pivot, fail, and scale, and by investors needing to add meaningful value. So you're trying to build a brain trust and a good mechanism and forum to make good decisions, to reduce risk and to get the most out of the money in the pot and to get to some kind of revenue. So my question is, any insights on how to have the investors and the founders on the same page about how to leverage their respective competencies and to find a way to get results and to monetize value creation?
Sure. I would say the biggest thing for me is like, I've created a lot of material. So just sometimes if I hear that question right away, like, show me everything you have, it kind of like shocks me, I guess from my perspective, like investors are very, very patient, So, it's a variety of things, right? Like, it's like the technology, because there's some uncertainty as far as like, how the technology will be used. I'm trying to think as far as like investors finding, founders and vice versa. Because, obviously I come across a fair amount. And it's like a dating relationship, right? I think, with other people here, and this is what I thought too, is like you find an investor once a way that they'll invest in you. But I've met with a lot of these gentlemen at these tech coffees for 4 or 5 times, and to make it easy on both parties, if you're interested, like if the founder throws events, to come to those events. And then trying to think what else. They say, from my perspective, they say a lot of time it's because I don't have enough, like I still need to continue to develop. And I have developed a lot more than a couple months ago. but I can't think of anything. That's just my perspective. It's like a lengthy process. I guess several months ago when I'd be kind of waiting, I'd be like, didn't know. And I think as like events are the secret sauce, to be honest, Ron. Like I think like both ways, coming to both everybody's events, because it's like it's one of those things that, especially even with the other federal grants, I'll reach out to them through different networks too. And yeah, I think that's the best conversations I've probably had have been on video, but I'm usually, just kind of bogged down and I don't really feel like it. So that's helped, with conversation.
Can I help explain this? Is events are good to trigger opportunities, but then when you connect, there needs to be some kind of chemistry. And these things, like you said about the dating thing, it's true. But what you find out when you meet a person you're going to, get to know and maybe live with, you're attracted to the looks, but you marry the brain.
Okay.
And you better be on the same page. Otherwise, you got a life with good intentions, you're going to hell. But you just don't see things the same way. And so like when I say to founders, let's get to like 1 million in sales or 10 million sales, or let's do something with the product to increase appeal. Because I have a technology background. I know a software company and we have a lot of big customers. So we got a bit of a feel of what this stuff's about and how to, make it appealing and how to market it. And it's amazing. We found many founders do have their vision. They do have a bunch of ideas. A lot of them are conjecture and opinion, but no matter. And so we say, okay, you got a guy like me around and maybe some other investors and your founder team. And this is a great forum to try and get these ideas out and explore our options and figure how can we leverage, and our competencies and do 1 + 1 = 3, 5, or 10.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say like, for the most part, investors have been there longer than the startups, right? Like, so a lot of it is just me learning all this stuff as far as like, what's appropriate to send in a text or email or, like a lot of times, like too much information, this goes for like a lot of things. A lot of times too much information is just like, if it's not warranted, then they might not even read it. But if it's something like a sentence or two and it's like more concise and that whole kind of thing, it's a learning experience. I feel like as far as like, because I get along better with investors, I would say today than I did, 3 months ago.
Right. So it's when it's good to give the elevator pitch versus a drawn out explanation. But also the main thing is what's the essence of the issue? And if I were in that person's position, what would I want to hear to tweak interest or to engage further to help fast track learning and appreciating the opportunity like you do as a founder in their mind, and also you getting some insights from them about a more a broader perspective, more experienced perspective. And because these people are putting in their own money, they're very cognizant of the risk and a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah.
And I always tell people there's about 10 major things got to work out. If one screws up, it's all for naught.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've heard from like founders towards the end that they turn into investors. So
yes.
Good trend there.
But then their challenge is, will those future founders or the current founders leverage their experiences? Because they're once founders. And I'm a founder of a software company. And I have a technology background. And it's been unbelievable how few of these founders ask meaningful questions or develop the thought processes and so forth. And the idea is to get to the truth, which is what's been proclaimed, but also context. A lot of missed context. And that's why things screw up and people don't get on the same page, or if they do, they fall off. And you got to get past that.
Totally agree. Any other question? John, did you have one? John G? And then I think we had some more. So Helen, he's asking if the session is recorded, right?
Yes, it's being live streamed on YouTube, and you can find it on YouTube later.
Yeah, so we're getting some academics questions. So basically, you can get into quantum anyway. Like I told you, I know this really talented guy. He he bachelor's in political science. He wrote a quantum book. He totally self-trained. I mean, he watched a lot of YouTube videos, and then now he's like a consultant. So he has a knack for it. But I would say the more traditional route is either math, physics, or computer science. He says after graduation in science. But don't let that get you down, because like I said, like some of these quantum hardware manufacturers that I've seen, you can go on and they don't require hardly anything because they need people. So it's just being at the right place at the right time, just with any other job. But in an emerging field like this, where there's some uncertainty, you probably have a higher chance of getting something really good. So Keynote, there are companies which bypass patents. Okay. Any other questions right now?
I noticed a question. What is the India position you think for quantum computing startup? Is something like looking for jobs in India?
I don't know. I don't know what's over there. I really don't. I mean, because like with anything, you can consult, right? And you can work remotely. There's a guy that reached out to me, I think 2 days ago, and he does that as far as, I think he staffs in India. I wasn't quite sure if it was in quantum, but probably like a staffer out there, right?
Maybe some company, like big company, they like to outsource to India.
Yeah. There has to be staff. Yeah, get in touch with your staffing agencies if you don't know who they are. Let's try to think here. Let's see. I'm not gonna look. Yeah, so they exist out there. And you're saying specifically for quantum. Yeah, if anybody knows, you could post it in the chat. I'm sure
I posted it already.
Oh, okay. Oh, where's it at, Kino?
After the question.
Okay. Yeah, so just
IBM India.
Yeah, IBM. Okay. And then any other questions?
Oh, I have a question. Where are the Raytheon stopper jobs located in the United States?
I'm sorry, the what jobs, Helen?
Raytheon.
Oh, Raytheon. You saw from that thing. That's a good question too. Just search for LinkedIn. You know, if you search for LinkedIn, just search Raytheon. Because obviously you saw the thing where it's DARPA, Raytheon, and one other one. So I'm trying to think. So what other resources are there? That seems to be a common question for jobs. What are the resources out there for quantum jobs? So, like I said, I used to pay a lot of attention to that because I was paying attention to it because it was just like, wow, there's lots of places hiring. And I would revert back to, I don't see as much in Google alerts, but if you do a quick search for quantum computing jobs, and so do you know what a TAM, SAM, SOM is, everybody? Like TAM, SAM, SOM, like it's like a funnel. So total addressable market goes down. So I would do a search for, first do quantum computing jobs, even in Google, or you could go through job sites too. So you have ZipRecruiter, you have Indeed, you have LinkedIn, the whole thing. I will tell you one thing is, like, I didn't have much luck with those one-click applies at all. You really want the ones that are on the full websites, like on the company manufacturer websites, that you have to spend a lot of time, trust me. Even though it takes a lot of time, you're gonna, for every 100 one-clicks, whatevers, your chance of hearing back is a lot lower. So that's a good framework. And then I would search for the specific hardware manufacturers. So I would search for even DARPA might have jobs if you have advanced degrees. But, you know, search for the Rigetti quantum computing jobs, INQ quantum computing jobs, D-Wave quantum computing jobs, I would look at those. Just because it's a high growth thing and it's still high risk. So it's not like, not everybody is settled on that these are awesome jobs. It's kind of like my startup is just like high potential for growth kind of thing. So it's just one of those things. It's just your likelihood of finding something good is pretty good. I would definitely do the hardware manufacturers too.
So is it a good idea to start a consulting company, start small and to become a subcontractor for Raytheon or some big other companies?
I mean, that's one way. We have it on SoCal Quantum Computing. I posted it in the link. So there's 6 other consultants, and I haven't really heard anything because it's not like it's a mainstream thing where mom and pop shop needs a quantum computer consultant to fix their whatever, because like the number of jobs out there aren't very high. So I have other, Chris Bishop and, Ryan Considine, other people that we know. So it doesn't hurt. Like a lot of things like the in-person things, and we were talking about events with Ron, is just get yourself out there as far as like going to these events, offering consulting service. There's just a lot of good things that come out of human interactions. If you can't find anything, I've had really good interactions with people at this place called Beach House. It's on the Pacific Ocean. And I go down there to, work from the beach on my phone. I need to take breaks. I work like 10, 12 hours a day. So I'm down there and I've had some of the best work conversations at these really relaxed places. I referred this lady at this tech coffee in San Diego. She's looking for a job. I told her I tried 4 months from a different city and then the same out here. I said, go to Starbucks, go to Torrey Pines Golf Course, go to the, go to the bar restaurant, talk to the bartender, ask them if they have jobs. I think you'll get your best jobs when people can associate with you the best, like one-on-one. And yes, you can find good jobs online, but if it's in a super high demand area like San Diego, that it's one of those things that if I wasted 4 months back in Ann Arbor, Michigan, number one, I should have moved here. Number two, I should have gone up to biotech where these people are, say, I'm a chemist, and they say, oh yeah, we just do DNA. And, it is what it is. It's just, I think you're better off, talking to people. So I'm posting a couple of these in the chat. So we've got Jessa on Tuesday, Thursday, what's this guy? Doug Fink. And so the one next Thursday, check out this guy's website, Quantum Computing Report. It has so much information. Do you go there a lot, Helen? Yeah. It's just, you go there and it's just like, it's got all of the update whatevers. I think he's the publishing and managing editor. So this is the Thursday 4/7 one. So we got more questions here. So the future, I think, is very bright. So like I said, with these, with quantum computing hardware. So what the experts have been, I go to a lot of these IEEEs. I've got like 3 certificates with this stuff, their events. And what they keep saying is that they think it's not going to be just one, it's going to be multiple, right? So this goes back to that conversation we were having as far as you have a CPU, GPU, QPU. Well, what D-Wave is planning to do already, and they already have hybrid annealer, which is CPU plus a QPU, is they're going to be, incorporating gate-based quantum technologies into the quantum annealer. And keep in mind, a lot of this hardware is still like three refrigerators wide. It's not small. So you've heard of photonics. There's a guy that came on photonics and they asked him, can you tell us a definitive result? He says, I prefer not to. There's like 1 million parts. They're trying to consolidate it to these off-the-shelf photonics parts. And so I'm not quite sure about photonics, but it's desirable because, a photon of light like Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, is that, you don't have to super cool it. I don't know if it goes over into X-ray or infrared, but basically, with a lot of these things, it's thought to be a lot easier to handle. So I was listening to a DARPA conversation last morning before Tech Coffee, and this DARPA official said there's so many technologies being worked on out there, and somebody could have like some private IP that we don't know about, and you get this huge, like a hockey slap shot, like all of a sudden kind of thing. And he didn't say hockey slap shot, but that's essentially what he said. But it's true, because not only, so the main technologies now, you have annealing, simulation, ion trap, photonics, and superconducting. And then you have more too. So I think the future is really bright. It's just like one of those things, like the law of averages, like as everybody's working their hardest to get their specific technology, and you have like 5 to 10 of these things that are legitimate. One of them are bound to work. So Centennial, immortality started. How do you think? I'm not quite familiar with that term, immortality startup. Centennial, you can come on. And then Natalie, where can you find your political science? Oh yeah, so the book, everybody, for Natalie is asking, it's called Dungeons and Qubits. That's the name of the book. Qubits. It's Brian Siegelwax. It's free too. Okay, any other questions? Centennial, did you want to come on, or I wasn't quite clear? And then go ahead, anybody else, if you have questions. Okay, so I see Nathan Shore is on. He comes to a lot of mine. Ringo, if you want to hop back on too. And then I think we have Prachi, if you have any questions. These are all people. Nardo, you can ask another question too. John G.
No, I'm all set. It's very informative.
Yeah, thank you. I told everybody.
It's obvious. It's the big need. I don't know. What is it now? They're like 300. They're predicting they're 300,000 people short in 5 years, something crazy like that.
And for
those
what?
numbers?
Anyway, when Nathan comes on, I think I think of Shore's algorithm, but his is SCHOR.
Yeah, right. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Oh, sorry. So I just made that point. It's amazing how many tens of thousands of people they're predicting we're going to need in 3 years. And especially if you know young people, this is great for like undergraduates to get involved. They'd have such a head start in their careers.
Yeah, actually, so several weeks ago, probably like 2 months ago, I found this article. It was on LinkedIn, and it says these children from China, they were getting trained on quantum computing as little as 6 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, that meant more to me than like many other articles that I've read, just because it takes a teacher, to be convinced that it's real, and ever since like this petroleum one where they're using quantum annealing to optimize, the world's biggest oil kind of thing, that too. But it's one of those things, like same thing with humans, is we're like 99.9999%. And then right after that, I saw it was a bunch of high school students. They started their own quantum club in high school.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah. And I mean, there's been more stuff like that too. But like I said, like I would still like to see the hardware, Ryan Considine, who is a special speaker on before, he's a physicist. So he actually did work on Honeywell hardware. And there was a picture I showed from the news, and he's like, I worked on that before. And then he's coming down in May for the event, venue TBD. And he's looking forward to it. But there's a lot of like really strong indicators, because when I first started in August, I wasn't too sure. Like I made a patent with quantum technology, but I thought it was just something good for the future. And then the two hardware manufacturers, the public announcements in October, after that second one, I'm like, this is real. And then every once in a while, you know, with this oil one, with the ISS space station, with the quantum annealing, you know, it further, you know, solidifies that all the, like, it's the government's 110% behind it. Industry is catching on. You know, it's not like a mainstream in academia, but it's like, you know, there's really big labs that do this stuff. And you guys have heard of, like, obviously, like quantum teleportation, where you can, like, you know, it's like this. Like there's no travel in between with, like, I think they're qubits. But anyway, Toshiba, I think that, what was it, like 600 kilometers they were able to pass quantum information, and they're trying to make all of this into a quantum internet. So fiber optics or whatever, but you could read this reports. You can get them from like IQT or Inside Quantum Technology. And, you know, so anyway, the problem is it loses signal. So you have to have these repeaters, you know, so over the course of time, it's like repeater, repeater, repeater. So anybody that we haven't heard from yet? We got somebody. And so I posted in the link a couple things. So obviously this upcoming Tuesday, Leaders of San Diego. I know some of you are here or close, Pasadena, Nardo, surrounding area. And then the big one is next Thursday. So that's Doug Fink. So he's the quantum computing report gentleman. So we do have something in quantum internet. You can't get money with advertisement. If you want to explain that a little bit, Kino, you can go ahead.
Yes, I heard a professor of MIT was saying he had quantum Google. He built a quantum Google, and he had a tutorial where he met guys which have a lot of money, and he says he was talking about the quantum internet, and he said to them, I can offer you a quantum Google, and you only pay me 10 million for my quantum Google, and now you have the chance to buy it. And the guys say, we think about it. And the next day, they told him, we don't buy it. And he asked them, why not? They say, it's so. If we are in internet and someone Googles it, we know anything about this guy, what he's looking for, what his interests are. And if you have the quantum internet, so you know nothing about no one. And so you can put no advertisement on it.
Oh, that's the problem, monetization.
For some.
Yeah, there was I don't know if you guys know, his name's Salvador E. Venegas. He was special speaker on a little bit a while ago. And he was talking about, like, his pitch deck was like all technical, like quantum walks. I posted that in the chat here. And he, out of everybody, all the special speakers, he has over 200 views compared to everybody else. I think number 2 is like Chris Bishop. And yeah, so they refer to him as the founder of quantum computing in Mexico. And then he hosted, or in part, I don't know, the Quantum Latino thing in Mexico. And it was virtual, you know. But yeah, he's like basically, you know, the main, because I think he had went to a bunch of really good schools out here, you know, and then so everybody looks up to him. However, he went to school in 2004. He started to believe in quantum in 2004. So raise your hand, anybody, if you've been here for, you know, with quantum since 2004. Not too many people. So just imagine how long he's waited. I think there's been, bumps and spikes along the way. As far as there was a company, I want to say it was QCware. I think in 2015, they thought that they'd have everything fixed in 2017, So it's hard to tell exactly where we are now, but I think we're a lot better than a couple of years ago. And we have all these, applications, these quantum annealing applications for optimization problems. So we had some other people, John Barnes, who was going to be on today. I think he was 2016, 2014. Yeah, something like that. So I think he was number 2. And just imagine, because you have this range, right? Like you have a range of quantumness from early 1900s, just like the theory. And they actually called quantum computing the actual math that you wrote out on a piece of paper. It wasn't actually like the physical hardware. So that was their form of quantum computing. And like I said, over the course of the next several decades, then you have, in the early 80s, NSF's grant. And I should have it on that SoCal Quantum site that I posted there. And that I have a bunch of good links. So I updated a lot of these things. So you could see it's basically the posters that I presented at March Mingle, which is San Diego's largest tech and startup networking event of the year. So would anybody like to, I don't know if I should ask how good too many of them. Anybody have any questions right now? We got a lot of people still. And these could be questions. I see people kind of like business professionals. If you have questions about how long it's coming, to get in to whatever. I just did a presentation on quantum computing in San Diego in the next 1 to 3 years. So I've got that, and you can DM me too through LinkedIn. I'll send you that. And I shared a couple of those slides as far as the finances and the CAGRs too. But yeah, we've kind of, let's see. And then Ron or Yinning, any other questions?
Yes, Kevin, thank you for your great presentation today. That was great. I don't have 3 questions. I just have one quick follow-up question from your last meeting. You mentioned, I think you mentioned his name is Daniel. He's going to give a talk.
Yes.
I went to your meetup site, but couldn't find the date. So I want to put on.
Daniel's at the end of the month. He's the day before my birthday. It's April 28th. And then I posted the one, and you should be able to find it on Meetup. You have to click on see all, because he's like the 4th week down. Yeah, he's on there because I posted his LinkedIn too. Obviously, so next Thursday we have a speaker too, Doug Fink, and then Doug is awesome with quantum reports. And then the week after that, we have David Shaw. I don't know if you guys know David Shaw. He does real fact-based insights, something like that. Anyway, he does these phenomenal reports. He did a report, this is in 2 weeks, basically. He did a report on the amount of error that was present in all these superconducting qubits. And then so at the top was IBM was the least error, and then it goes down, down, down. And it is a phenomenal report. I think he wrote it. It's fact-based. Yeah, it's called Quantum Hardware Outlook 2022. And he wrote it. Anyway, it will take you 2 days to read this, but it's really good material. So he's going to be on in 2 weeks.
Hi, I have an observation.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm in my 70s, and for those of you on the attending who are in their 6th or 7th or 8th decade of life, we go back to the 60s when Big Iron first came out. You guys probably you might be somewhat familiar with it, but what I'm trying to say is the quantum computing industry now is not that much different than things were, let's say, in the mid-60s when IBM came out with their Big Iron, but there were no applications. People weren't really applying them except for what they were doing in IBM research. Then I don't know if you remember, a guy named Ross Perot came along, And he ended up being the governor of Texas and become he became one of the first tech billionaires. And what he did is he went to the government and he says, look, you guys, and IBM, he says, you got all this hardware and it's got a lot of technology and businesses don't know how to use it. So I'm starting this company that'll help you solve problems. So what he did was, at that time, they were sending out Social Security checks, as you can imagine, by hand, typically, writing the checks or sometimes printing them. So he solved that. They were sending out hundreds of millions every month. They had thousands of people working on this. So he came up with a way, and instead of thousands of people doing this, it only took 100. So the point I'm trying to make, if I'm making sense, is we're still waiting for the Ross Perot of this industry, where there's some technical application and someone comes along and says, hey, I can solve this problem. Back in the 60s, he said using big iron. Now they'll say, I can solve this problem using this quantum application. That's what we're waiting for. Maybe that Ross Perot is now in high school somewhere, an undergraduate, but that's what we're missing.
That was very nice. So I'm going to send you guys the D-Wave. These are some applications. So I have had some issues when I call them, like having them verify whatever's, but they just keep getting big clients. It says save on foods. Optimization tasks took from 25 hours to 2 minutes of calculations. And then on this website, they have like all these PDFs. So, you guys can look at that. So any other business questions we haven't heard? Marlu or Prachi, feel free to hop on. I see Arthur Klein, Andrew Snyder, Mark. Awesome. Hey, Marla.
Thank you for the great presentation, Kevin. Really insightful and very broad. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How do you go about expanding your team? You started on your own, basically, right? And you have great perspective for growth.
Yeah. So basically, it's 13 interested people. I hit a snag because basically a lot of these people can't work full time. They have their own startups, So I had like a full org chart and I had like specific tasks and deliverables and the whole thing. And so basically when I was talking about this earlier, it's like they have these forms, like if you have like an advisor, they work a certain number of hours a month, you have to stick to those because if there was just a startup in San Diego 2 weeks ago, this lady came to one of the tech coffees and they ran out of funds. So you'll get your first grant and then, whatever. So anyways, that's how I'm running it, is basically like as a founder, like the Founders Institute and their Silicon Valley Bank documents and, these types of things. Okay. Any other questions? I think we still have a decent number of people on. Was there anything you guys wanted me to kind of touch on more? Like Marlo just said, it's been very broad, which is awesome. Kind of like touches for everybody. And, because obviously there's a lot more about business. We talked about technical things, those types of things. So how about John G or Rangel?
Yeah, I can have a question. Thank you very much for this really great event. I came from a country where technology is not so advanced, but now I'm here in Europe, so I know like a lot of applications of in quantum in my PhD. But what can you advise for people like me who has like back in my country, there's nothing of a technology boom for this kind of for quantum, and there's just no way to like to start it there and expect people to like open their mind and start investing in like so. Okay.
Well, you should start an event. Host with other people. You probably express more interest than, like you said, mostly like 99% of other the people. I told a previous colleague same kind of thing in Philippines is, basically like start something, and like say for instance, like somebody comes into town, like a hardware manufacturer exec, and then they say, oh, is there anything going on here? And they say, oh, there's this kid that's got like 10 people coming to his things every week. So it's a lot of that stuff too. I mean, that's what I found with this is back in when I started the special speakers in December, and I think this all got started in like October. Yeah, October, is that like I was just like, yeah, I should start this. And then now it's more about the special speakers because I spend a lot of time preparing. I do a lot of the, I do a Word or no PowerPoint into Word or into PDF, that kind of stuff. And it's a routine and it doesn't take me nearly as amount of time as it did before. So, but yeah, I would start something, if you're interested in it, it is, how to succeed as a quantum computing startup application. It sounds like it doesn't take much to start stuff. Like you just need a computer, like a projector, a screen. I did ones, it was just, I did handouts and I just handed out like the most recent news. And that was fascinating. That was good about that specific one. But yeah, there's all different types of formats you can do. We had one that went for like 6 hours, it's not today, but those things happen. It's because you really want to get down to the bottom of quantum and you still might not agree on something, because like for me, quantum annealing is taking off and there's somebody else that doesn't. So yeah, I would just, kind of stick your neck out there and if it isn't like an in-person, just do something online. You gotta, if it's that important to you, you should probably, you could do something. So.
Kevin.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Kevin, I just, a quick
go ahead.
Plug. I just posted an event that's coming up April 11th at UT Austin with Scott Aronson. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that name.
Yeah.
And you got two other great speakers, Denise Rufner. You mentioned Atom Computing, and of course, Worley, he's in Austin.
Yeah.
So you got Aronson, Denise Rufner, Worley. It's on April 11th. It's both online and off. I think everybody here might find it interesting. I put the link in, and there's ways to participate. There's going to be vendors there. So if we're looking for a job, we're going to have about 3 or 4 vendors there. We're going to have tables, and they're looking for interns and employment.
Yeah, thanks.
And you don't have to be in Austin. We're going to arrange it so you can connect with them online.
Yeah.
So take a look at that link, and you can contact me if you're interested in meeting one of the vendors.
Yeah, thanks for posting that.
Yeah, no, it's I wanted to tell you about it. Thank you.
Yeah, I've been trying to get them both on, but Worley was busy and.
Yeah, it's amazing. It was just pure coincidence. It fell into place to get them all in one day.
You said it's both virtual.
Yes, it's online and on site.
Okay,
but you don't have to be on site to connect with the vendors.
Gotcha.
So just contact me, and I'll make sure if you're looking for a job that you'll have a way to talk to them at the end.
Sure. So we got
I actually have a good question.
You're muted, Kevin.
Okay, so this is the one DePoncha went to. She's a UC San Diego student, 2020. So this is the evolution of IBM summer schools, Qiskit, quantum. And then in 2021, they called it quantum machine learning. And then in 2022, error correction summer. Imagine sending your kid to error correction summer school. Pretty awesome, huh? And then so she was an intern. She did some stuff with Google. So she was a STEM speaker. She did Harvard WeCode. There's a lot of stuff as far as like diversity goes with, quantum. And So she said she really liked this one. She's an intern. And then this is what she's doing, the STEP internship. She's a student, but this is kind of what I do for everybody. I took this picture on campus. Pretty cool, huh? So these are the consultants that we have. So it's available through SoCalQuantumComputing.com. So Chris Bishop, he's basically a tech expert. He worked at IBM for 12 years. He was a TEDx speaker too, concerning somewhat IBM. Timothy, he's more technical. Ryan, like I said, he's going to come down here in May. Russ is a quantum investor. And then Javier, he's really technical. So then this is today's event. So thanks again for Helen for making this 400 plus registered. I think we were actually probably over 450 total registered. And then, so this is what I was talking about, 1 million qubit wafer scale quantum chip prototype, you know? So the more I read it, I'm like, oh, it's just a prototype. But anyway, there's just so much. This is just something I haven't even heard of before. And then you have superconducting, you have all of these. And then this is just from this past week, quantum storage breakthrough. So you hear people with quantum that don't know about quantum or aren't interested, they'll say, that'll never happen with quantum. But I just saw a thing related to quantum that they can make something deterministic instead of probabilistic. So this, in this specific one, it's saying quantum storage 20 milliseconds breakthrough. So it doesn't sound like long, but you know, it's basically, you know, there was a lot of good news this week, Alphabet and quantum. So are you guys familiar with this? You can raise your hand. Let's see, this guy. So it's basically Alphabet's quantum division spinning off into a separate company. So these are the types of things. It's just like, oh yeah, well, that's important.
Yeah, by the way, quick interruption. That's Jack Hadari behind that sandbox.
Yeah,
and he's an amazing guy. I mean, he's amazing. In his 20s, he took 2 companies public.
Awesome.
And then came out to Silicon Valley and started working with Google. And even though he doesn't have a STEM degree, he's in charge of Google's whole quantum effort here in the Valley. Amazing. Jack Hadari. Yeah. And by the way, one more person you mentioned on your list, Russ Fine.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, some of his writings are really good. I started looking at him.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree.
Very perceptive.
Yeah, he's been a special speaker on the discussion too. So, and then you get stuff like this, like a $30 million startup, you know, Alice and Bob. So these things called hot spin qubits and then atomic watches. So, okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. Thanks to Helen for hosting. I'm sure a lot of us know it's Saturday. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all the input. If you have any questions or concerns for Helen or for me, I don't know what Helen wants, but you know, feel free to contact me through LinkedIn. I think I put that one in there. So if you didn't get the LinkedIn, that's kind of like my primary one that I use. Yeah, and everybody, please thank Helen. Thank you, everybody, for all the good feedback here. I hope you all learned a lot, enjoyed the session. And again, this is awesome, Helen. I appreciate it. So could you say it one more time?
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and thanks everybody for joining. We got a huge panel today. Probably close to 60, 70 coming in and out. But yeah, if you can't get enough of quantum, I've got one next Thursday. Check out the Southern California Quantum Computing discussion on Meetup or on LinkedIn. You can find me through LinkedIn. Helen, I don't know if you want to post anything right now.
I can share your information in the email.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So again, thanks everybody for coming on this beautiful Saturday day. I know it's different times for a lot of us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a good upcoming week. Take care, everybody. Thanks, Helen.